First, we want to talk about the USWNT national team Olympic roster that was announced earlier this week. I'm sure you're all dying to talk about it if you haven't been talking about it for several days already. And the second thing, too, as well, we're going to discuss a little bit of the future of Christen Press and Tobin Heath. Post-Olympics, they have left Manchester United after the season has completed, and so there's some question marks as to what they'll do next. So, ladies and gentlemen, like, comment, and subscribe for more content if you enjoy this sort of thing. But let's get right into talking about the roster. So, earlier on this week, Coach Vlatko Andonovski released the 2021 Tokyo Olympics roster. It included all of these players. Let me make sure I get this right. Crystal Dunn, Kelly O'Hara, Becky Sauerbrunn, Abby Dahlkemper, Emily Sonnet, and Tierna Davidson, all defenders. Then in the midfield, Christy Mewis, Sam Mewis, Lindsay Horan, Julie Ertz, and Rose Lavelle. Then in the forward line, we have Christen Press, Tobin Heath, Carly Lloyd, Alex Morgan, and Megan Rapinoe. And then, of course, you get to take 4 alternates with you to the Olympics in the event that something happens. In this case, those 4 alternates included Katerina McCardio, Lynn Williams, Jane Campbell, and also Casey Kruger. So, overall thoughts on the roster. I guess I'm just going to come out of the gate and say this. If I had to give the roster a grade, I would give it an A. I think that this roster is just absolutely pooling with endless amounts of talent. And I guess with the United States, and for those of you who are U.S. Women's national team fans, that's been sort of a luxury that we've had over the last 2-3 decades is there's no shortage of talent to go around, which makes these conversations a lot of fun. But I truly believe that Vlatko picked one of the most talented rosters he possibly could have. Is the roster free of risk? No, nothing is. Is the roster perfect? No, nothing is. Does the roster have the talent to win the Olympics? I think absolutely. And I don't think the roster could get much better than who he's all selected. Things that I want to talk about in particular with the roster. First, I gotta give a shout out to Christy Mewis, the comeback kid, because she has done something that I think every athlete dreams of, which is just having an insane comeback. She spent, by my calculation, 7 years off of the United States Women's national team roster, has had a really great 2020, and then has capitalized on that throughout 2021, and is now coming all the way back to being in the Olympic team. Not very many athletes can say that they've had such a drastic comeback, and not very many athletes can say they've even gone to the Olympics. So I gotta give up to Christy Mewis for making the roster, and I think she rightfully so deserved it. If my math was right, since the last video I talked about this in, at one point I did some math and I saw that in 6 out of the 8 games that Christy Mewis had played up until that point, she scored or assisted in at least 1 goal. And a lot of the time she would be subbed on in like the 80th minute or the 60th minute, so she'd really be on the pitch for 20 to 30 minutes. So to me, what she's shown is that she can be a very valuable sub for the United States Women's national team. She can come on and make a difference. Did she play as well the last 2-3 games? That's up for debate. I think sometimes yes, I think sometimes no. But regardless, I think she deserved to be in the roster, and she, more importantly, has the talent to be in the roster and the talent to make a difference to the United States Women's national team. And like I've said earlier, and I'll say it again, at the end of the day with this roster, you have to remember that players who can bring you the talent today, that's really what matters. It's not about players who have brought you the talent before. It's not about players who will bring you the talent in 4 or 5 years. You go to these tournaments and you go for the now, and I think Vlatko did a pretty solid job of picking all of the players who have done so lately, right now, and are going to for this tournament. So, other notable items from this particular roster. I am really, really pumped for Casey Kruger as well. I thought that was the biggest surprise in this roster, actually, was Casey Kruger being included as an alternate. Now, the reason I say that is because throughout Casey Kruger's history of playing professional soccer, especially in the United States, is she's been left off the roster by and large, and I think a lot of journalists don't really know why, because she's got an insane amount of talent. I would argue she's probably just as talented, if not more talented, than the likes of Tierna Davidson and Emily Sonnet. That's a whole nother debate in and of itself, but it's just been kind of a head scratcher for a lot of fans, a lot of journalists, and to see her actually break into the roster, even as an alternate, I'd consider a really awesome note for her in her career, because it's been something that I think that she deserves to have and just hasn't had a shot to do. So good on Casey Kruger for that. That was a really pleasant surprise that I saw waking up to that roster. A couple of other things and big notable items. I think that, so early on, like my very first prediction, I said that Allie Krieger and Ashlyn Harris would be in the roster. And for the last 4 or 5 months, they haven't been in camp. Actually, I want to correct myself here. March, April, May, June. So we'll say 4 months. The last 4 months, they weren't in camp. No one really knew if it was due to their baby girl, Sloan, being born. Nobody really knew if it was a question of talent. Were they not bringing the goods in training? Did they not fit into Coach Vlatko's system? No one really knows why. But my thing is, I think that Ali Krieger and Ashlyn Harris, where I stand with them, is I think that they're still world-class players who could have definitely made a difference for this team in this tournament. Like I said, you got to bring in players who are playing well right now and are going to perform well in this tournament. And I think Ali Krieger and Ashlyn Harris definitely could have provided that for this team. And it makes me wonder why they haven't been in the roster lately and why they weren't included in the Olympic roster. It like I said, it kind of all goes back to why were they left out of the camp roster? And unless Coach Vlatko Andonovski says explicitly the reason, no one really knows. Do I fault him for leaving them out? No, because the thing is, he is closest to these players. He's closest to his own system. He's closest to the talent. So he's the person who is in the best position to make the best position possible. So I'm not going to condemn any selections or any players who are left out because, like I said, I think he is one of the best coaches in the world. And the fact that, I guess if I'm going to sum it up in a sentence, in Vlatko we trust. That's essentially where I'm coming from. Am I bummed that Ali Krieger and Ashlyn Harris were left off of the roster? Of course, because like I said, I think they could have made a huge difference. And will we ever know why they were left off? Unless Coach Vlatko says the reasons, then I guess we'll never really know. Initially, I thought it was because, they have started a small family now, and that can really make a big difference in your life. So I didn't know if that would be part of it, but the other things I've seen in media suggest otherwise. I don't really know what to think, but I always like to trust the source, and until we get word from the source, that being U.S. Soccer or Coach Vlatko, we'll never really know. So that's just what I'll say on that. There's one other thing I wanted to talk about too, with the roster as well, and that was the exclusion of Midge Purce in this roster. So I have a lot of different thoughts and theories on this. I think that Midge Purce, well, I'll just tell you where I stand with Midge Purce. I think Midge Purce right now her trajectory is only going up. I think she's going to end up being a world-class winger someday for the United States. However, I don't think she's quite there yet. I think she's still missing true proven world-class talent. Now, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Am I saying that Midge Purce is a bad player? No, I am not. In fact, it's quite the opposite. I think Midge Purce is such a potential valuable prospect that she's going to be one of the world's best someday. However, as I've said before, you have to remember, you have to take the talent that's world-class, bona fide, tried and true right now. And I just don't think Midge Purce is quite there yet. And here's the other side of this coin. So Coach Vlatko, he could have taken Midge Purce on, even as an alternate. He could have taken her as an alternate. He could have included her in the full 18 roster. But here's the rub with that. If Midge Purce did go to the Olympics, the reality is if she's going as an alternate, she's not probably going to play. She probably will, because if I'm telling you right now, Kristen Press and Megan Rapinoe will probably be starting on the wings, and it leaves very little room for Midge Purce to get in there unless one of them gets injured. And is there a high likelihood for that? No one knows. But the reality is Midge Purce would have been going to the Olympics for 6 to 8 weeks as someone who is just there to hang out and watch, not someone who is there to capitalize, play, and learn and grow on their own game to get to the world-class talent that I believe that she can get to being. So in a way, Coach Vlatko pretty much had two options. He could take Midge Purce as an alternate, maybe as a sub, and she probably would miss out on most of the NWSL season and all the potential growth she could get in doing so. Or he could let her play in the NWSL for the entire summer, capitalize on the exponential growth that I think she's on the verge of achieving, and just continue to get better and better and better, because the only way that players get better is by playing. So I think by actually him letting Midge Purce play in the NWSL, or I shouldn't say letting, that's maybe a poor term, by him excluding Midge Purce off of the roster and thus having her play in the NWSL for the entire summer, she's going to play a lot more, she's going to get a lot more minutes. She'll probably start every second for Gotham this summer, and that's the way she's going to get better. That's the way she's going to reach her peak talent that she can get. And then by the time the next Olympics, the next World Cup comes around, I think Midge Purce will be ready, and I think she'll make a big difference. I'll give you another example that comes to mind in this scenario. Look at Crystal Dunn. Crystal Dunn was left off of, I believe it was the 2015 World Cup roster, and it devastated her. But at the end of the day, she was able to grow her game over the next 4 or 5 years, and now she is one of the world's best players. And I think that a very similar situation could happen to Midge Purce right now. So that's just some food for thought. Do I think that Midge Purce is going to be an excellent player someday? I think so. Do I think she's a great player right now? Absolutely. Do I think she was quite ready for the Olympics right now and would have been worth it to take her? I don't believe so, but everybody's got different thoughts, opinions, or angles and ideas that I haven't considered on that. So take that for what you will, and feel free to continue the discussion down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. All right, so let me just make sure that I'm not missing anything else when it comes to the Olympic roster. One other thing I want to address, actually, now that my mind's on it, is I know that Tobin Heath and Julie Ertz are both question marks kind of going into Olympic summer selection because of their injuries. The reality of it is, I'll just kind of say this, similar to what I was talking about earlier with Vlatko being the ultimate source of the truth and being closest to the situation. As a coach who's coaching the best team in the world and is one of the best coaches in the world, I don't think he would take Tobin Heath and Julie Ertz if they weren't match ready. I can't imagine any coach in general in their right mind would take players if they weren't ready. So I essentially, what I'm saying here is, I know a lot of fans are pretty concerned about Tobin Heath's injury and Julie Ertz's injury and whether or not they're going to be ready for matches. And I don't think that U.S. Soccer would allow them to go if they weren't healed and if they didn't think that their injuries were subsided enough in order for them to play. So I like, in this case, Vlatko we trust. I'm sure that he took them because they were ready to play and ready to heal. However, me just speaking as a fan speculating, I really don't know that for sure. None of us do, because of the fact of the matter is that the people who are closest to the situation are Vlatko and U.S. Soccer, and until they tell us something different, then that's just kind of the philosophy I'm going with. So, like I said, everybody's got their thoughts on those things, ladies and gentlemen, but I want to know, what do you make of the Olympic roster for this summer? Drop them down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts.